Hi, I'm Dr. Victoria Sarvati, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what happened between May 23rd and May 31st while a delegation from the Nathaniel Fellowship and friends went to Israel to witness as the results of October 7th. I'm just going to give you an overview of our trip as the places that we went and some of the things that we saw, the archaeological sites, and then in another video, I'm going to go into deeper my thoughts concerning what we need to do. But just now, I just want to just take you on a sort of a geographical rather, tour of Israel. So just come with me as I explain this very important tour that we took to the Holy Land. First of all, I want you to know it was not easy to get there. Our flight on United Airlines was canceled, and we only had just about a week or so to try to get a flight to Israel, to Tel Aviv, but there were no American carriers going to Tel Aviv. So we were able to get to somewhere in Europe. In our case, we found Athens, and then from Athens, we got on Aegean Airlines, and we made our trip to Tel Aviv. It was not easy because in the process, the flights were disappearing off of our screens on our laptops. We would be talking to the agent at United, and she would argue with us, saying that there were no seats available on a particular flight, but we're looking at the seats and they were available. There would be times we would be filling out the registration form or the reservation form, and it would just disappear off the screen. There were times when we said we'd like this flight, 34 whatever, and she said, oh, there is no such flight. Finally, Cynthia says, get on your phone and go to your own website and see if there's not a flight. And then she did, and there was. Anyway, it was crazy. It was almost like the warfare against us, but it just wasn't us. It was everybody. At first, most of us were going on the same flight, but when that flight got canceled, it was each man to himself. And we all had to just find a way to get there. Some got there the day before us, some got there the day after us. And it was just a dog-eat-dog situation in order to get to Israel. It just seemed like the whole world is against anybody flying there. And none of the pilots were allowed to stay in Tel Aviv. And so duty time just made it impossible for them to fly there. Anyway, we finally get there, and it was wonderful weather the whole entire time we were there. Maybe a little warm on a couple of days, but other than that, it was very, very pleasant. So it was a great trip overall as far as weather was concerned, which this is always an important factor when you go to Jerusalem because it can get really, really hot. One thing that we did when we got there the first day was we went to Jerusalem and went to the Jerusalem Seminary and met with Brian. How do you say his last name? Baruch, and his first name is Baruch actually in Hebrew, but Kavasnika. I don't know why I can never remember that. Yeah, I do know because it's a hard name. Anyway, so we went to the Jerusalem Seminary and we saw this place where people can come and study there in the land. And the Nathaniel Foundation has been supporting the Jerusalem Seminary for a while now, and it was very important for us to see that aspect of education. Our solidarity delegation, I wanted to tell you, consisted of myself and Cynthia, Morgan Taylor, Joshua Christian, Judy Darby, Mindy Tapp, which maybe some of you might know, Parthenia Antoine, Rosalie Jerome, her assistant Jeff Craig, Brad Young, and Kathy Clatterbaugh, who has been to our fellowship several times. And then, of course, Barry and Batia and Liron and her new husband, Andrew, came on most of our tours. Anyway, just Cynthia and I and just a couple others went to see Brian. That was the very first day. Hardly anybody was in yet. The next morning, however, I saw a guy named Melvin Pillay, and this guy was the person that Jennifer Sheehan told me I needed to meet because she found out about the land that we have here, our house, we bought the land for our house. And she says, this guy's a prophet and he's prophesied over your land. So I met with Melvin, and he told me he is from India, I believe. And he is moving back to this area, so you might be seeing him pretty soon. But he said the Lord told him, before he knew me, to buy this property that our house sits on for a quarter per lot. We bought 2 lots. And at first we only wanted 1 lot, but then we felt, oh, we need to go buy that other lot. We don't know why we had that feeling that they needed to be bought as a tandem. But I believe it was because of this prophetic prayer that Melvin prayed over our property. And he bought this property for the one that God has chosen. And that this property will be called Migdal Shalom, the Tower of Peace. And I know that a lot of people who have come here have said that very thing, that it is just a Tower of Peace. Anyway, I met Melvin there in Jerusalem. What a small world that we meet this guy. I meet this guy that prophesied over my house some years back. That was really special. I met with Menachem Bar Shalom, who we've also helped in the past with the Nathaniel Foundation. David Nekrutman, he did a special talk for us when we were in Caesarea. We also saw Claudia, if you remember her, from the March of Remembrance here. She was actually there in Jerusalem as well with the March of the Nations. Anyway, it was all the different people. You know, Brian was there. He wasn't really on our tour very much, but you just turn around and you meet people that you know. And it's just, everybody just comes together in this small little country, and you see all these wonderful friends that are from all over. We went on the first day when everybody was there. We went to the Mount of Olives. We saw the Cave of the Prophets, and in the Cave of the Prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are buried, and all their followers. So that was a very interesting cave to go through. We saw the panoramic view of the city and took did our covenant blessing and prayer with the bread and the wine before we started out. We made the descent to the Garden of Gethsemane. This would be a similar descent as Yeshua would have taken on his way from Bethany. We sat across from the Eastern Gate, and Cynthia gave a wonderful teaching. And, you know, just to know that you're sitting right there on that fault line, that the mountain's going to separate in 2 different directions. And Yeshua, when he comes, just his foot touches it and it causes it. And then he walks through the valley, all the way through the Kidron Valley, even to the former gate of the Golden Gate, where he went in on the donkey 2,000 years ago. So it's just amazing how you can sit there in the places that you know Yeshua walked and where he will walk according to the scripture. It just does something to you. We prayed over the Kidron Valley and the dry bones, and just brought that prophecy to the Lord's remembrance. We went to the Bethlehem Ephrat. We looked over the area where Yeshua would have been born, and the angels above would have hearkened of his birth. We had a Sabbath dinner that night with Chaim Eisen and his wife Rhea in a neighborhood called Har Nof, and it's a very Orthodox neighborhood. The whole neighborhood was shut down, and we walked in. We had to walk in because we couldn't drive the car in, and he lives quite a few blocks into this neighborhood. It's not like a neighborhood like we think of in suburbia here. It's like a little city. It's like a town, and a lot of rolling hills. It's just beautiful. And the children were playing in the streets, and of course not a car in sight, so they're playing ball, and they're laughing, and people are out strolling and walking. And we go into their home and had this wonderful Shabbat dinner, and he started singing songs and gave a wonderful teaching. And I was just listening because the windows were open and a cool breeze was coming through, and I could hear other men in other homes singing the same songs, the Sabbath. And it was just a beautiful, coming together and organized, synchronized movement of Shabbat. And I really saw something that I have never experienced before, when everyone joins in and there's agreement. It was quite beautiful, actually. The next day we went to the walls of Jerusalem and the ramparts. And so we walked around all the walls of Jerusalem, and we interceded on behalf of Israel, on behalf of the nations, but mostly to bring Israel home, for the Lord to gather his people. And we gave him no rest until he makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. We became the watchmen on the walls, actually fulfilling the prophecies that we are to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for the Notzrim to come in and to pray from the Mount Ephraim. It was just a beautiful, it was hard because I remember it was a little hot that day, and we were going up and down steps, up and down steps, up and down steps. And I did that so much for so many miles that my calves started hurting. I started getting cramps in my calves. And the next day I could barely walk. But it was so worth it to actually go on those walls and be that watchman, that shomrim, that notzrim on the walls, and declaring the word of the Lord and fulfilling these prophecies. We went to the Sheep's Pool, and we had a lesson by Byron Stinson, the guy that actually arranged for the red heifers to be brought into Jerusalem. We looked at an alternative burial cave and crucifixion site of Yeshua, mostly because they're really not sure about the ones that are determined now to be the burial cave and the crucifixion site. We went to the Tower of David and Herod's court, where Herod actually listened to Yeshua's case, and we actually saw the floor, the original floor that Yeshua walked on. We were above it on a platform, but we could see the floor that he actually walked on, and we could see the building that the walls and the ceilings and the blocks that he was looking at. It was quite intense. We ate that night at a place called Deja Vu because we ate early because the next day we were going to fast. And why were we going to fast? Well, we were going into the Gaza envelope the next morning, and we felt like we needed to just be able to hear from the Lord, to hear what was going on in the heart of God. And as we go into this place where we could still hear fighting and war in the distance, we wanted to make sure we were plugged in to the Lord and just decreasing in our flesh and increasing in our spirit. So all of us did a fast, and we started it after our early dinner at Deja Vu, cute little place. Anyway, the next day was Sunday, and we went to the Nova site. We went down to where all these young people were murdered and massacred, and all these shrines, all these memorials. It was a graveyard of memorials for these young people, and they were all beautiful with their picture on a stick, and rocks everywhere. Some of them had gardens. People had really decorated the areas up for each person, and it was just a sad sight to behold. Looking around, there were eucalyptus trees, and they're very small trunks, even though they grow to be about maybe 20 feet tall. The leaves are real wispy. There's no place to hide, even though there's a forest of these. There's just no place to hide. So wherever they were running to, they could be seen. And we saw burnt marks on the roads where cars were burning and had exploded. There were a lot of those. And we even saw the car graveyard, where a bunch of cars, I would say thousands of them, were parked or packed on top of each other if they were crushed and burnt. And it was overwhelming to see all these cars and know that they had pulled all the seats were pulled out. Why? Because there was blood inside, and the Israelis are very careful about putting away and burying any remains or blood even of anyone who dies. And then we went from there to the kibbutz Kisafim, which was a kibbutz that was badly attacked. There were houses burned. They had pictures of people that burned alive in the houses, families. You could still see bread on the table from that was Shabbat, the day that it happened, October 7th, and so they didn't remove anything. They just left these homes. Some of the people were killed, and so the homes are just sitting there as is, and bullet holes all in the walls, all on the floor, the ceilings. It was a disaster area. We talked to the security guards that were there on the grounds that day, and how they attacked and counterattacked the terrorists, and how they had to use sort of like guerrilla warfare and hide behind bushes and run to another bush and try to confuse them. Um, it was devastating to see what we saw. A whole neighborhood destroyed, and we know that people were massacred, they were murdered, they were raped, and so it was traumatic to us to have to go there and see it and to live it, as these guards actually told us what happened. And we went into that place. We went into that dark place. We went into that psychological place of fear and anxiety and sadness. And we took some of that on ourselves, because the Lord says, comfort ye, my people. And that means sometimes going into those dark places and hearing and listening, and taking those emotions, maybe sharing them with them. It's just too hard to bear on your own. Then we went to Sderot. In Sderot, we met with the mayor, and he spent about 45 minutes with us and explained how Sderot was attacked. And then we went to the police station, and we talked to 2 policemen. And the police station was completely mowed down because the terrorists took over the police station after killing all the policemen in it, and it became their headquarters. And so they literally, when they realized that all the policemen were dead, they got a tank and they mowed down the police station, killing the terrorists inside. There were sharpshooters everywhere, both on both sides, and they were just explaining how all this was going down while people were, still walking the street at first. It was horrible. We could hear artillery fire and tank fire. We were only 800 meters from the border of Gaza at that point in time, but we didn't care, and there was never any fear in our hearts. Cynthia was praying at that point in time whenever it sounded really bad, but nobody flinched. We just prayed right through it. And then we went and got coffee at a coffee shop there in Sderot. And then we painted a bomb shelter, some of those shelters that Barry and Batia have put all around Israel. And it was quite a therapeutic exercise for us. We put beautiful blue skies and clouds and painted grass on the bottom and had a hot air balloon. Anyway, the people were going by saying, "What are you doing?" And then when we told them, they just started crying. So we didn't think anybody cared. But the next day we went to Hadassah Hospital. We talked to paralyzed soldiers, and they told us their stories, the terror attacks. Then we went to the Millennium Center, and we visited with a man named Glenn Cohen, who was an ex-Mossad agent. And he was the psychiatrist that interviewed all the hostages as they came out of Gaza. We went to Tel Aviv. We met with Daniel Lipschitz. Yes, that's how you say his name. And he was talking about his hostages and his grandfather that was still there. And we learned a lot about the American hostages. And then that night we went to a musical, which really was another relief for us, another therapeutic exercise. We went to Caesarea on Tuesday. We met with a lady who was a refugee from the north, and she just cried. She says, "I just want to hug you guys. I can't believe you're here. I didn't know anybody loved us anymore." We had lunch with David Krutman and his wife. We went to Zikron Yaakov for the March of the Nations, and which is the parent ministry as March of the Remembrances. We went to Somek Wineries, which was nice, or Somek. Anyway, that was also a nice little break from all of the things that have been going on. And then we met with Brian Kovosnika and his wife at the hotel. We stayed up till 12 o'clock talking. So that was a late night. The next day, on Wednesday, we went to the city of David. We went with Eli Shukran, who is a archaeologist, and he's the one that found the Pool of Shalom. The Pool of Shalom has been excavated even more, and you can see so much more now of what it looked like in the first century. He also excavated more of the ascent up to Temple Mount from the Pool of Siloam, and so we can go all the way up to the temple now. Well, not to the actual Temple Mount, but to where, as far as we can go anyway. We had lunch at Arches with Ellie, which was very sweet. We went to the Southern Steps where Brad gave a wonderful teaching on Shavuot, where this is where the people were meeting in the house of the Lord, and all these people Jews from all these different nations came and heard wonderful things about the Lord. They received Jesus and they got baptized in about the 200 and some odd mikvahs that are found and excavated all around the Southern Steps. So just to see that and have that come to life was awesome. While we were there, hundreds, I would say, at least 100, if not more, soldiers were there, and they were dancing and singing and celebrating. They were paratroopers that had just graduated, and they were having a ceremony at the Western Wall, and we got to just witness that. Brad even got to dance with them and a couple of the other guys, so that was wonderful. We went to the Gehenna Bridge, which is the bridge over hell, and we know in scriptures that the Lord says even that valley of Gehenna will be sacred to me one day. And of course, this was the valley where children were sacrificed to Molech, and it was a garbage dump, and Yeshua referenced it as the gateway to hell. But it definitely is being renovated and restored, and it's looking very beautiful. So we're getting there. We had dinner at Odom, and the next day we had the Jerusalem prayer breakfast, which was Thursday. And Brad and I were in a breakout session where we did a tag team teaching. Then we ended our trip at Beit Shemesh, where we saw Israel 365's headquarters, and we broke the curse that had happened whenever the king of the north and the king of the south came face to face with each other, and there was a war, and then they broke apart, and ever since then there's been tension and fighting and distance between the north and the south. Well, there you got the overlay of what we did. Next week, I'm going to go into some of the spiritual understanding of what came out of it, and we'll be talking more about it. So God bless you. Have a great day.